Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another unique item video. This is one that I don't know why it took me so long to do this item. I should have done this item a long time ago. And that is the Gheed's Fortune Grand Charm. The Gheed's Fortune Grand Charm is a unique Grand Charm. It is the only unique Grand Charm. And you can only have one of them in your inventory at any given time. You can, however, store them within your shared stash tab. So if you have multiple Gheeds, you can put them in your shared stash. However, if you have a Gheeds on your person at any given time, and another Gheeds drops on the ground, you cannot pick it up unless you go back in town to store away your first one. This particular item has some pretty hefty variables on it, which does make finding alternative Gheeds a good option. And it's kind of an interesting one, though, because the variables don't necessarily make or break the item, because each individual variable can be good for each individual purpose. Finding a perfect Gheeds isn't exactly like make or break. It's really about finding Gheeds that have nearly perfect in each individual category for each individual purpose. Although, of course, having a perfect one would be nice. So right off the bat, obviously you can tell that it's a level 62 charm. So level 62 isn't too bad. That's around Nightmare difficulty. And we'll explore where you can potentially find yourself Gheeds later, but for right now, let's just focus on the stats. The second stat on the item is 160% extra gold from monsters. Now, this is a variable, and it does vary pretty heavily from 80 to 160%. So if you are, for instance, say like a gold find barbarian, or you're just trying to stack as much gold find as you can for gambling purposes, which is a pretty good reason, you would want to see if you could find yourself a 160% Gheeds for that purpose. The next variable on the list is the reduces all vendor prices by 15%, which also varies from 10 to 15%. Now, if you want to do some heavy gambling, if you're trying to gamble away the fortune of gold, which you found, you really want to get yourself a 15% because it's going to make a huge difference in the amount of gold that you spend on your gambling items. In fact, if we take this over to the gambling shop, I can show you that it makes a pretty big difference in the price of the item in the gambling shop. So without Gheeds, let's see if we drop our Gheeds on the ground, we are looking at a gambling price for an amulet of 63,000, or a gambling price of a ring for 50,000. If we pick the Gheeds back up and we go to the shop, you will notice that the rings and amulets are only 53,550 for the amulet, and 42,500 for the ring. Now, this is not the only item in the game that has a reduced vendor price on it. There is one other item in the game that also has reduced vendor prices, and it is an item that I usually recommend everyone have at least one of in their inventory for exactly this purpose, and that is the edge bow. So the Gheeds and the edge bow can be stacked together to increase the discount to a massive 30% discount off of all items, which will bring our amulets down even further to 44,100 and our rings down to 35,000 a ring, which is quite a steal. And you can gamble away to your heart's content for a much cheaper price. This also increases the value of the items when you sell them back to the shop as well. And, it's just, in general, it's very nice to have the reduces all vendor prices by 15%. Now, this particular charm also has a third effect, which is the magic find bonus. So the magic find bonus is 20 to 40%, and it is a pretty big variable. So finding a 40% Gheeds is definitely very nice. So as you can see here, each individual effect on the Gheeds is not necessarily like make or break. Like, if you find a 40% magic find with crappy other stats, well, that's still good. You can use that on your magic find character. If you find a 15% vendor prices, but all the other stats are terrible, well, hang on to it, because now you have a very good gambling charm. If you find a very nice 160% extra gold for monsters, but the other effects are kind of garbage, well, keep it, because you could use that on your gold find barbarian. It comes into play that, not necessarily does it have to be perfect in all of the variables. It can be, you could have 2 or 3 Gheeds laying around in your stashes at some point, all with various effects that you can swap back and forth as needed. So you have a decent one for magic finding, a decent one for shopping, and so forth and so on. And stacking it with the edge bow is an absolutely excellent way to increase your amount of money. Now, let's go ahead and drop these rings on the ground. Oh no, not my Annihilus Charm. Now, with the Gheeds, one of the things that we will talk about with this is the fact that obviously Magic Find is going to have a pretty huge play in whether you find one of these. You find Grand Charms all the time from everything, whether it's from Diablo, Bale, Elite Monsters, Trash Mobs, Cow Level. I mean, literally it drops everywhere. And you have a chance to get a Gheeds every time you're in a zone where a Gheeds can potentially drop. And that's what we're going to take a look at next, which is Silo's Pen, and we're going to go over basically what's the drop chance calculation, where's the best place to find ourselves a Gheeds, because quite honestly, it's a little up in the air. We don't necessarily know where the best place to find these are, and that's what we're going to discover. So let me pull up Silo's Pen real quick. And pink. That is not correct. There we go. All right, so we're going to go to unique items and Gheed's Fortune. Now, if you're going to find a Gheeds, you're probably going to be already running, say, about 200% Magic Find. So we're going to assume about 200. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Bosses. And as you can see, we've got a pretty good chance for Mandariel at 1 in 222. Bale, let's see, non-quests. Bale is 1 in 560 in Hell. And we also have Mephisto at 1 in 582. Even Duriel in Hell has a decent chance at 1 in 889. And honestly, we've got a lot of good choices here. Iswal can drop it with a fairly good odds. Bloodraven in Hell. Radamant in Hell. Neelathak in Nightmare actually has a pretty good chance at 1 in 6,000. 1 in 1,647. And even Neelathak in Hell is pretty good at 1 in 1,563. So as you can see, some pretty good choices, pretty good drop rates, especially Andariel in Hell difficulty at 1 in 222. And as far as super uniques go, we've got, we already talked about these three. Countess has a pretty good chance at 1 in 2,045. Not bad. Hephaestus the Armorer in the River of Flame, 1 in 2,813. He's pretty easy to farm. We also got Cow King, Grand Visor of Chaos, Infector of Souls, Lord Decease. All very good options. Battlemaid Serena in the Ruined Temple is pretty easy to find. Bonebreaker in the Crypt, also pretty easy to find. Pindleskin has a pretty decent chance at 1 in 5,485. Even Eldritch the Rectifier, Thresh Socket, Iback the Unleashed, Sharptooth Slayer, Doc Farron, Shank the Overseer, Stormtree, Corpsefire. I mean, there's almost an infinite number of options here. Fire Eye, Cold Trow, Dark Elder, Beetle Burst, Bone Ash, freaking Pitspawn Foul Dog, Bishy Boss, Rockanishu, Treehead Woodfist. I mean, as you can see, just like a massive list of monsters that all have pretty decent chances to drop this item. From my experience, my personal experience, it doesn't tend to drop as often as it's stated here. I don't know why exactly Gheeds is a little bit more rare than it otherwise normally would be, but I have seen it like not drop for like a freaking month straight, and then all of a sudden I've seen like 2 or 3 of them fall within a day. It's a little bit strange on the drop rate, and I think it has to do with the fact that there's just so many Grand Charms that drop on a regular basis that they may have kind of diminished the drop percentage for it because there is so many Grand Charms that drop on a regular basis. So, like, you know, let's say the drop rate is 1 in 1,482. Well, you know, I swear, like on a daily basis, you know, like within a game that you run, maybe like Chaoses or whatever, you might see like anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000 grand charms drop in a day. So if one or two of those is a Gheed's and you don't see it, somebody snatches it up before you see it, maybe that's what's going on, because usually everybody wants to have at least one Gheed's charm. All in all, though, the Gheed's is definitely a very nice charm, and let me double check the selling items, because I can't even remember if it does affect selling items. I thought it was selling and buying, but it might just be buying. So let's see here. We've got a 1,632 glaive of fire with the edge bow. That goes down to 1,344. So if we sell it with the edge bow and the Gheed's Fortune, it's 1,080. Let's take off both. And it's still 1,080. So it looks like it only affects the purchasing value of the item, not the selling value of the item. Good to know. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals gambling your way onto my videos. And I hope that your gambles paid off and you got yourself a unique one. And as always, hit that subscribe button so that you can keep watching.